West Virginia, the only state with two panhandles. Pinched between Ohio to the west and Pennsylvania to the east, the northern panhandle is easy to miss on a map, but it is one of the most geographically unusual and historically important corners of Appalachia. Follow along as I take you on a tour from top to bottom of this overlooked panhandle, exploring the towns, hollows, points of interest, quirks, and of course, the history along the way. I can't touch on every town and every detail, but I'll give you a decent geography overview on what's going on today in this overlooked panhandle. In order to get to the exact top of West Virginia, we need to travel to Ohio to look at these monuments. They're as close as we can get to the real thing, because out there, submerged in the Ohio River, is the true top and point where West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Ohio all meet. The point is not in the middle of the river where boundaries are usually drawn. This is because West Virginia's jurisdiction extends to the low water mark on the Ohio side of the river. Locks and dams have now made that point submerged. Back across the river, in the furthest north town of the Panhandle, is a monument of Americana that has been here since 1938. The world's largest teapot. But this teapot was not just a quirky roadside attraction, it was a symbol. Chester, the neighboring town of Newell, and East Liverpool across the river in Ohio made up what once was the pottery capital of the world. The Homer Laughlin China Company, founded in 1871 and headquartered in Newell, became world-renowned for its colorful fiesta-ware dinnerware. The clay dug from the surrounding hills was perfect for ceramics, and for decades this region churned out plates, cups, teapots, bricks, and decorative tile. This pottery industry gave rise to an Upper Ohio Valley slang term, hoopy. The word comes from the cooper shops that supported the potteries. Finished pottery was packaged in straw inside large wooden barrels. Rural West Virginians who migrated north to find work in the potteries often ended up making those barrel hoops, and locals began calling them hoopies. Over time, the term broadened. Today, hoopy is used much in the same way as hillbilly. Next to Newell is the first look at heavy industry along West Virginia's portion of the Ohio River. Along the river is where you'll find the flattest land in the Panhandle. Flat land, rail, and river access makes a suitable place for large-scale industrialization. As we continue south along the Ohio River, Mountaineer Racetrack and Casino appears. People came from neighboring states because West Virginia allowed forms of gambling that nearby states did not. Today, the resort still draws some visitors, but it's a far cry from the regional destination it once was. Across from Mountaineer, abandoned clubs are a reminder of the heavier crowds the racing and gambling traffic brought in. Real quick, if you're enjoying these videos, all you gotta do is watch it all the way through or just subscribe to help me out. Thank you. In this portion of the Panhandle, you'll find the only state park, Tomlinson Run. Nearby, a massive substation on Wiley Ridge supplies the northern Panhandle with step-down power from Ohio and Pennsylvania power plants. Strong power connections were and still are needed for this next area just south. Weirton, the historical industrial powerhouse of the northern Panhandle. Occupying a narrow 5-mile wide strip of land, Weirton holds the unique distinction of being the only U.S. city to sit in one state while its borders directly press against two others. In 1909, industrialist Ernest Weir founded the Weirton Steel Corporation and began developing the area. Weir leveraged the Ohio River and the Panhandle Railroad to bypass Pittsburgh's industrial congestion and tap directly into Pittsburgh's established steel supply chains and raw materials. This geographic advantage allowed the city to become a global leader in tin plate production and a crucial materials supplier during World War II. Weirton Steel swelled to the state's largest private employer and taxpayer, dominating global tin plate production. The unforgiving economics of global steel finally idled the last operations in 2024. Today, the former steel grounds are being resurrected by Form Energy's $760 million iron air battery plant. Driving through downtown Weirton reveals a quiet echo of what once was a thriving center. though it does still boast the quirky distinction of having the furthest north biscuit world. Today, the town's energy has shifted up the hill. This is where a majority of shops and restaurants are located. DJ's Barbecue Ribs is arguably the most famous restaurant in Weirton, drawing in visitors from surrounding states. Up here, the landscape shifts again behind the Weirton Hospital. There's an enclave of the area's most expensive homes where it's not uncommon to have local doctors as your next door neighbors. J.J. Abrams chose Weirton to film his 2011 sci-fi thriller Super 8 because its sprawling mills and residential corridors such as Fernwood Avenue perfectly captured the gritty aesthetic of a 1979 working-class steel town. In the northern Panhandle, bridges are lifelines. They decide whether a town is connected to opportunity or trapped on the wrong side of the river. The older Market Street Bridge, once another connection between Weirton and Steubenville, was closed in December 2023. In 1917, the Follansbee Coke plant fulfilled the region's growing need. The plant was shuttered in 2022 and now sits abandoned. Downtown Wellsburg maintains its markedly preserved 19th century aesthetic because it is one of the oldest continually inhabited settlements along the Ohio River and holds a massive national historic district that protects nearly the entire central footprint. Bethany College is the state's oldest private institution of higher education, predating West Virginia's statehood. West Liberty, a public university, sits a few miles away. Passing through Betty Zane, you'll see active remnants of the coal industry. If the Panhandle was its own state, it would be the smallest state, as it's just about half the size of Rhode Island. If there was going to be a capital of the Panhandle, it would without a doubt be Wheeling. Wheeling's historical rise to prominence was fueled by a perfect storm of geography and transportation, making it one of the most vital cities in West Virginia's history. Once the state's largest city and its first capital, it sat at the crucial intersection of the Ohio River, the National Road, and the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad connected it to the Atlantic coast. This unparalleled access transformed the city into an industrial powerhouse known for iron, steel, glass, and especially nail manufacturing, earning it the moniker Nail City. The wealth of this era left behind a legacy of dense urban life and stunning architecture. The Wheeling Suspension Bridge, an 1894 engineering marvel, was once the largest of its kind in the world. Today, the city is actively pivoting from heavy industry towards tourism and revitalization, leveraging its monumental past through downtown streetscape projects and waterfront developments. Wheeling was the undeniable birthplace of West Virginia, serving as the crucial staging ground holding the conventions that orchestrated the breakaway from Virginia in 1863. Wheeling's geographic isolation in the northern Panhandle made travel exhausting for Southern legislators, many of whom harbored deep political resentments against the city's heavy-handed northern founders. This geographic and political friction sparked a bizarre 14-year floating capital era before finally choosing Charleston. The Wheeling Island Hotel, Casino, and Racetrack was once a major draw for the region, but like Mountaineer Casino to the north, Wheeling Island has seen its fortunes fade. The Ogle Bay Resort above Wheeling is the Panhandle's biggest tourist attraction. The 2,000-some-acre year-round resort has a zoo, skiing, golf, spa, and more attractions. The largest homes in the Panhandle are located on the hilltops around this resort. One of the largest homes I've ever seen is nearby. In 2004, one business opening outside of Wheeling up on an old coal refuse dump set off a chain reaction of development. Cabela's was a major economic win for the Wheeling area. At the time, a Cabela's store was not just another big box retailer, it was a destination. People would drive long distances to visit. It pulled shoppers from West Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and beyond, similar to what a Buc-ee's would do today along an interstate. The store helped anchor a much larger retail and logistics district called the Highlands. The Highlands matters because it helped rebuild a part of Ohio County's tax base after older industrial revenue faded. South of Wheeling, the Panhandle begins to feel more rural and more Appalachian. In Marshall County, one of the most surprising places in the entire state sits back in the hills. The largest Hare Krishna community, outside of Moundsville, is built around the Palace of Gold. The community began in 1968. At its height, New Vindobin covered thousands of acres and had hundreds of residents and was a major pilgrimage site. But the community became tied to scandals and was raided by the FBI in 1987. The raid was part of a larger ongoing investigation into the community's leader. Today, it's still a pilgrimage site. You can tour the Palace of Gold for $12 and enjoy the gardens, festivals, and dine at the vegetarian restaurant. East of the palace, way up a secluded holler on the West Virginia-Pennsylvania border, was the small map dot of Alley Grove. This small community along Wheeling Creek over the years was removed to make way for a massive natural gas development at the epicenter of the Marcellus Shale gas formation. This once quiet hollow is now filled with bright lights, the hum of compressors, truck traffic, and a 5G connection. Moving back towards the river is Moundsville. This dramatic view is from Riverview Park. The town's name comes from Grave Creek Mound, a massive ancient burial mound built roughly 2,000 years ago. It is one of the largest conical burial mounds in North America, rising more than 60 feet above the town. Directly across the street from that ancient mound stands the former West Virginia Penitentiary. The prison opened in 1876 and operated until 1995. Its Gothic stone walls look like a castle. During its 119 years of operation, it held thousands of inmates and became known for its violence, harsh conditions, and 94 executions. Tucked in another holler is Rosby's Rock. This was the location of the final spike driven into the ground for the monumentally important Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, completing the line between the Atlantic Ocean and the Ohio River Valley here on Christmas Eve 1852. This was the Golden Spike of the East. South of Moundsville, the river corridor becomes heavily industrial again. This is not the old pottery and steel story of the Upper Panhandle. The Mitchell Power Plant dominates the landscape. Further south, the industrial geography becomes more chemical and gas focused. The Covestro plant adds another layer. Established in 1950s, the site became an important polyurethane and specialty chemical facility. Finally, near Proctor, we reach the southern end of this journey, and one of the boundary markers tied to the Mason-Dixon story. Unfortunately, the monument is missing from this enclosure. So let's follow this line east as we pass the St. Joseph Settlement, officially founded in 1853. It holds a historical significance as a prominent and remarkably preserved 19th century enclave of German Catholic immigrants. The tight-knit rural geography and religious cohesion allowed the settlement to maintain its distinct ethnic identity for generations, with residents continuing to teach and speak German well into the 20th century. Finally, at the extreme east and bottom of the Panhandle is the corner of Pennsylvania where the Mason-Dixon line and Ellicott line meet. Directly north, 63 miles from here, is where we began at the submerged point in the Ohio River at the tippy top of West Virginia. And that's the entire length of the Northern Panhandle. The Northern Panhandle is culturally Appalachian, economically Rust Belt, and socially tied to Pittsburgh. You can even dine on Primanti sandwiches in Weirton and Wheeling. It is not the coal camp Appalachia of southern West Virginia, and it is not the flat farm belt Midwest of Ohio. It is the Upper Ohio Valley, which is its own thing. It has steep hills and hollers, but also steel mill neighborhoods. It has people who live in West Virginia, shop in Ohio, work in Pennsylvania, fly out of Pittsburgh. These are the places that helped build the modern United States and then had to survive when the country stopped needing them. But more than that, this area is a reminder of some of the most interesting places in America are the ones hiding in the narrow spaces between bigger stories. Comment below your Northern Panhandle experiences. Thanks for watching.